So first of all, welcome to everybody here in person with us at the Baeck College, to our patrons, our students, our faculty, our friends. It's wonderful to have you here with us in person, and it's really exciting to have so many of you online joining us this evening as well. Thank you so much for being with us. The order of play, as it were, tonight is Jackie and I are going to spend about half an hour. She's going to do most of the talking, don't worry. And then we're going to show for the first time the film that we made of a roundtable discussion between myself and 6 of my very wonderful colleagues. And you'll hear a lot more about the experiences of women in the rabbinate from that. And after that, Jackie will take some questions, so you'll have some time to think about things you might like to ask for. We'll take questions from the room, and also if you're online, you can put questions in the chat facility on Zoom, and we'll remind you of that. So thank you very much. I'm Rabbi Professor Deborah Kahn-Harris. I'm the principal of the Baeck College. We are here today celebrating Rabbi Dr Jackie Tabick, who will soon be celebrating the 50th anniversary of her ordination in 1975 by the Baeck College. Tonight is really a celebration of her, and also, I hope you know, also an opportunity for you to give back something to the college as well, not you, Jackie, but the rest of us, to find some ways to give back to the college as well. So this is also our annual fundraiser, part of our annual fundraising event, and you'll see some prompts for that if you're on the screen as well. And a big thank you to those of you who've already contributed to the annual fundraiser. We're aiming to raise £50,000 in honor of Jackie's 50 years in the rabbinate. So,
well, first of all, I want to say that it's not just a celebration of me. It should be a celebration of all my wonderful female colleagues who've done so much in the rabbinate, and a celebration of what you and the Baeck College have done to allow this to happen. And so I see that as the celebration. It's not just, please, not me.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, it's a celebration of all of those things. And I know how much you have not, during the past 50 years, sought that limelight. So I'm really grateful that you've agreed to do this today. And in addition to being that opportunity for us to celebrate the college, it's really a great piece of social history for us to have recorded, and so that future generations will also get to hear what it was like in...
And it's also a chance for me to say thank you and to pay back to the college, because you're right, I haven't got lots of money to give. I'm a retired rabbi, so I haven't got lots, but I can give you time, and this is my contribution, which I hope lots of people will respond to.
We are grateful. Thank you. So in that vein, I would love for you to reflect with us about what 5 decades of working as a congregational rabbi, as a convener of a 2 Batei Din, as all sorts of really other interesting aspects of your career, including currently being the vice president of the World Congress of Faiths, which really expands your influence even outside of our benighted shores. Why don't you give us some of the highlights? Tell us a few interesting anecdotes we might not otherwise get to hear.
It is actually fascinating to hear the difference of what it was like 50 years ago and now. Because 50 years isn't really a very long time, if you think about it. I'm trying not to think of it as a very long time, to be quite honest. I don't want to be 50 years older than whatever. So I started at West London Synagogue, and just thinking how the college was when I first was there. I was the only woman for 2 years. Dr. Ellen Lippman and I used to have long conversations in the ladies, which she really appreciated because there was another woman to talk to.
And who was Ellen, for people who don't know?
Dr. Ellen Lippman was wonderful. She was the Bible teacher, and she came over from Germany. One of those amazing teachers that came from Germany, either just before or just after the war. And she regarded all the children, all the students at the college, children at least, especially those of us who were sort of younger. So she loved Larry and I. She really did. She adored us. We actually went and had dinner with her just before the ordination. We got married, and then she died a few weeks. So the first outing we had as a married couple was to her funeral, which was very sad because she was lovely. Yeah. But that was great. So yes, the college was no other woman there, just me, which is a bit odd. And of course, coming into the college was also difficult because they weren't quite sure what to do with a woman. I wasn't prepared to say that I was going to definitely take smicha, but then none of the other candidates were asked the question either. Right. But as a result, I wasn't given a grant, and so things were a bit chaotic and a bit difficult. So I was given a job at West London Synagogue. But at West London Synagogue, Hugo didn't know, Hugo Grin, amazing colleague, but he didn't actually introduce me properly, so they thought I was a bat mitzvah girl gone wrong. Because I was looking quite young, really. I've always, thank God, looked younger than I am. But they really did. So they got really uptight at what was this bat mitzvah girl doing in charge of things. And it took a while to get that sorted out.
And what was your time at West London like? Because you stayed there post-ordination as well.
Well, I didn't have a chance to go anywhere else, really. At the college, you were supposed to go to different synagogues, but no other synagogue dared take me.
Wow.
Because they were really worried what people would say about a woman rabbi. And West London were prepared with Hugo for me to stay there. And when I was qualified, though, I was not given a job as rabbi there, but as education director. Mm-hmm. And I was told I didn't really need a full salary because I had a husband who could look after me. 50 years, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved working at West London. I learnt so much from Rabbi Grin, part of the family. It was an amazing congregation. You could do so much. And he was open to me changing things. So I introduced things like having a Tikkun Leil Shavuot, reading the Ten Commandments from a scroll on the roof of West London Synagogue. It was amazing. The city is all totally quiet round you. And there you are on the roof singing the Ten Commandments.
That sounds amazing.
It was great.
I want to go do that.
Oh, you should try. So yes, and then of course there were difficulties. There was the man who always read a newspaper whenever I got on the bima. But that was the way things were. And then of course the experience of unfortunately having to deal with the time when Rabbi Grin was so ill and then he died. Yeah. I remember that summer I had 4 different plans as to what we would do for the High Holy Days. I made up 4 different rotas and plans.
Wow.
Because we weren't sure whether he would be better or not there. So we had the plans.
And that was about, 20 years that you were there for, is that right?
Yeah. Well, I was there 25 years.
Wow.
When I left.
Yeah, but about 20 years before he passed away, yeah?
That was, 23 years before he passed away.
Wow.
And then, of course, came his funeral, unfortunately, and Barney Kalo, who was he was lovely, he liked Larry and I as well. He was running the Sephardi experience for looking after the Chevra Kadisha and stuff, and also looked after West London's burials. And he told me that what they've done in certain circumstances like that was ask people to read psalms round a coffin.
Right.
So when the coffin arrived at West London, I phoned colleagues in advance and asked them to come in. And they stood at the 4 corners reciting psalms. And then as other people arrived and they saw this, they came up. So there must have been about 30 rabbis surrounding Hugo's coffin by the time the service started, reciting psalms. And it really gave a lot of comfort to his family to see how his colleagues respected him and honoured him.
And how was it for you?
It was a difficult time for me. I was extremely fond of Hugo. It was, he's very much a father figure for me. My father died when I was a kid, and I'd always looked for father figures, and he was one. And he taught me so much. And for him to go and to be aware that West London was not safe at that point, it was very difficult. I walked out of the synagogue with Jackie Grimm. We were hand in hand walking out. And that was, the sadness of that moment, the real sadness. And then afterwards, of course, there was all this comeback from various members of the community who were convinced that Rabbi Sachs would have come to the funeral if only it had been a male rabbi who'd been taking the service. As if. Though
Right.
I must tell you, Rabbi Sachs was wonderful to me personally.
Sure.
He phoned me, he invited me round for tea. He said, someone's got to look after the rabbi. And he did, personally, but not in public. But that was okay.
But it's always a difficulty for us as women rabbis, what people will do in public and what they will say in private, especially...
Well, that was because I was a Reform rabbi. It was nothing to do with woman.
I see.
That was nothing to do with being a woman, I'm sure.
Sure.
He was just being kind to me as a colleague who needed that support at that point.
So you were at West London for 25 years. And when you left, where did you go?
I went off to Weybridge, a lovely, gorgeous community down in the south. One of the reasons I went to them was because they were interested in adult education. And I loved teaching, and I thought, this is great. To have a council actually turn up to adult education, this is new. It doesn't happen in many congregations, I tell you. And it was great, it was lovely. I enjoyed it there. And I did a lot of youth work there as well, and ran the Cheder for many years. It just was a wonderful place to be, with kindness and support. And I mean, of course, there was this gorgeous old gentleman who announced loudly, well, I'm not going to let that woman rabbi ever bury me. So he got ill, and of course I visited him in hospital. So eventually he said, well, you can do the service, but not give the hesped. And then sort of a few more months went by, and he said, okay, you can give the hesped. But he actually left the area before he died, so I didn't have the chance to do anything.
But it does show how important it is, because I think you were probably the first woman rabbi to be appointed at Weybridge, yes?
Sure.
It's how important it is for people to have the experience of having a woman rabbi before they realise that actually it's...
We don't have horns.
amongst other things. And that actually they might enjoy having a woman rabbi in their community, and that it could be a positive experience.
Absolutely. I mean, in West London, when I got there, about 6 out of every 10, or no, more, 7 out of every 10 B'nai Mitzvah were boys. Within a couple of years, it was equal.
There is demonstrable proof.
Absolute proof.
Yeah. The difference it makes.
Yeah.
You didn't have a role model, did you, for being a woman in the rabbinate?
No. No, I
How did you
didn't.
decide that you wanted to take smicha?
It's actually, I was very much part of Southwest Essex Reform Synagogue, which was very egalitarian. And I was on the choir. From the age of 10, I was on the choir because my mum was on the choir and she couldn't leave me at home on my own. And my brother and sister had already left the house because I was the baby. So I was singing on the choir, and I got very involved because I could read, well, eventually I could read Hebrew. I didn't go to Cheder till I was 10.
Right.
But they put me in a class of 6-year-olds, and I learnt to read Hebrew within a few weeks. That's one good way to get people to read Hebrew quickly. Put them in with 6-year-olds when you're 10. Anyway, so I learned, and so I did Hebrew, and I could read music, so I was useful. So I was very much running bits of the choir over the high holy days and things like that. And I had wonderful rabbis. I mean, there was Alan Miller. He was an amazing intellect. Naughty story.
Do we want a naughty story?
Yes, go on, yeah. He said in a sermon when I was about 11, 12, that if you didn't understand anything, you should always ask. Right? Good, fine. The next week in his sermon, he used the word brothel. And I didn't know what a brothel was. So I went over to ask him afterwards, and he was too embarrassed to tell me, which is why I remember the story. Otherwise, I'd never remember it. But he was a great teacher. And then afterwards, I had the absolute honor, greatness of being taught by Rabbi Dov Marmor. And he was my real rabbi for many years. And, you know, I babysat his children, which I love when I see Rabbi Dr. Michael Marmor these days, and remind him that I used to babysit him. It's great. And so I was very lucky. And I think that was one part. I belonged to Whoopshies, which was a very intellectual youth group. And there were many rabbis from that group, like Jonathan Maganat, like Jeffrey Newman, like Colin Imer, right? So I was at the end of that long trail of rabbis. So that influenced me as well. I think my father's death influenced me. I needed to understand what was happening here. And I wanted to learn more about Judaism. That's what I wanted to do. So I went to the college to learn more. And I also liked teaching. And I look at the rabbinate and think, well, that's a lot of teaching. And, you know, I had to make a choice before I came to the rabbinate. And I'd actually trained as an infant school teacher. But I like teaching teens and I like teaching adults as well. Whereas in rabbi, you get to teach all age groups. It's great fun.
So how did you go from doing that bread and butter work of congregational rabbinate, services, teaching, all the life cycle stuff, to being convener of the Reform Beit Din and the European Beit Din?
Well, I've always been interested in what happens to people who convert. I have a great deal of respect for them. I mean, it's an amazing path that people take. You know, those of us who are Jewish are stuck with it. You know, and some people take advantage of that and some people don't. But to come into it, to choose to be part of the people, which, just look at our world now, it's not an easy, and people are still converting. And in fact, since October the 7th, the numbers have gone up. People have felt a need to commit more to being Jewish because of October the 7th. People have been wavering. So incredible respect. But at West London, we used to have a large number of people. And I was curious what happened to them. So I started asking questions, and then I thought of doing a PhD. And I was very lucky because Professor Miller at the city took me on as a student with a smicha instead of having to do sort of masters and that sort of stuff. He just took me on straight into the PhD program, not realizing how little maths I knew, but never mind. My computers are good, and I wanted to study and find out what happened. Why did people convert? And then what happened to them? Was it a good experience? How could we make the experience better? And of course, this was then one of my main interests. And then when the job became available at the Reform Movement, when Rodney retired, and at the same point, Weybridge was looking to get a younger rabbi, I managed to transition into that role. And that was great. And I managed to partner that with being a rabbi at West Central Liberal Synagogue. So I managed to be congregational rabbi and do the other at the same time, which was a dream world for me. And I've really enjoyed doing both jobs. I've just run a course, a Beit Din in Milan for 3 days. It's my last one. They finally allowed me to retire. I retired 18 months ago, but somehow it didn't happen. But they've allowed me, I think, this time now. It was an amazing court, these people coming who have Jewish backgrounds that they've just discovered. And tales they tell of things like, well, in our part of the world, couples are taken outside when they're getting married. A towel or a cloth is put over them and God's blessings are asked upon them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Jewish bit's there across Europe, and it comes out. And at the court, the last case we dealt with, a couple with 5 children. What greater blessing could there be to help people like that? It's an amazing thing I was allowed to do, to help people on that journey.
That's really beautiful, and it must be such a powerful way to feel like you can really move into a retirement, whatever that
I'm
might
not ready for that.
No. So if we've been looking backwards, if we look forwards, what are your hopes for your own career, but also more broadly for the future of women in the rabbinate, do you think?
My own career, I don't know. I'm not into writing. That's my husband's job.
Okay.
So that's not me. I like dealing with people. Maybe I'll find somewhere else to do some volunteering. I don't know. The moment I volunteer hearing kids read in a school, and I'm known as Grandma Owl in the Brownie Pack.
Nice.
So, I do those things at the moment. But maybe now, not the back in, I'll find something else to do. I like people. I'm a people person. For the future for the women rabbinate, I look forward to the day when no one calls us women rabbis. When we're rabbis. Plain and simple, that's all I ever wanted to be. When I was qualified, the Guardian phoned up and said, what is it like to be a woman rabbi? I said, I've been a woman rabbi for 1 week. Ask me in 20 years. Of course, they never did. I never wanted to be the woman rabbi. I wanted to be a rabbi who I hope was respected, who I hope helped people on their journey, who helped through crises and happy times and brought Judaism to life in their lives. That's what I wanted. And that's what I want for my colleagues, not to be seen as the women. That's my hope for the future, really.
That's really very powerful, and I relate to it very much. I know when I was appointed to be principal of the college, you'll hear it in the video, I didn't think about the fact that I would be the first woman to hold this position. I just thought there's a job I can do. And it's so often the world outside of us that comes back and says, oh, but this is an achievement. Do you feel like 50 years in the rabbinate is an achievement?
It may be an achievement that I kept going, but I didn't allow several nasty bits, which we haven't talked about and I don't want to talk about, derail me, because they could have done.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky that I have an incredibly supportive husband.
Yep.
And children, when they grew up, were supportive. Without some of my friends and my husband, I don't think I would have survived some of the nastinesses that came my way. And I think people have to be aware that even today women face that quite often. It's not that easy. It's not that egalitarian out there, really. There are still many glass ceilings. So yes, it's an achievement that I actually am still here, and I'm here, and I'm still doing stuff. That's the achievement, as far as I'm concerned.
I can tell you one other thing, one other little achievement that I know you've alluded to, and that is that you were married shortly before you were ordained.
That's right, yeah.
So I'm told by a little bird that this Friday is your and Larry's 50th wedding anniversary as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think from everyone here at the college, we want to say huge mazal tov to you for that. That is not a small thing.
Lag BaOmer.
It's Lag BaOmer, indeed.
We were a Lag BaOmer couple. A
some-
Tuesday marriage.
And we have just a little card for you on behalf of
thank
everyone
you.
at the college.
Oh, that's really kind.
We're really pleased that you could be with us here.
Yes, you do know that what the college nearly did to me.
No, what was that?
Yes, well, the date they put to hand in our rabbinic theses was our wedding day. And I threatened to walk down the aisle and hand in my thesis to Albert Friedlander under the chuppah. But my mother would have been devastated. So I gave it in a week early.
Oh.
I grew up with no women rabbis. I didn't think that was something that you could do.
I feel like I didn't have a role model. I just had this deep sense of justice about things, which I carried into coming into the rabbinate, and was so grateful that there were people around who could support that.
Within a few years of my ordination, tables turned very, very rapidly.
This place, our learning, felt so equal, so fully egalitarian.
We can't neglect the progress that's been made if we don't keep explaining the why and helping people understand what's there and why it's there and that it's deliberate. I worry that we also take it for granted, and that's when it becomes in jeopardy.
Some of the great rabbis and teachers at the college who brought the European Jewish tradition of scholarship and deep learning to this country, and that's something that Baeck College has nurtured and allowed to blossom and grow.
Because if we want a Jewish future for our world, the only way a Jewish future is possible is if there are Jewish leaders who are properly trained and can bring love and education and intelligent learning to our community. Without that, what hope do we have?
Well, welcome back to everybody online. We've had a lovely time here in the room. I can see a few comments on the screens. You're very welcome. It was an awful lot of fun to record the video and be part of that round table. I know Jackie and I both very much.
It was lovely talking to our colleagues.
Indeed, and I think we really wondered why we don't do that more often.
Yeah.
You will all be sent a link to the video, so if you want to watch it again, you'll be able to. That's actually a cut down version of the round table. There's a longer version as well if you want to see all of the outtakes, so to speak. But now we have about 15 minutes left where people can ask questions. So particularly for those of you online, if you'd like to pop your questions into the chat box, I'll be happy to ask Jackie any of your questions. And anybody in the room who has a question, if you want to ask, then I'll repeat it to make sure everybody online can hear the questions. So is there somebody who would like to kick us off with a question? Perhaps if yes, Alistair Nisbet, a former chair of Baeck College and one of the, if I do say, visionary male allies who appointed me as principal of the college. So, you know, we don't get anywhere without our male allies.
Thank you. So one of the things that rabbis are about is obviously a journey with God, and you missed that off the first part of your discussion, so perhaps now in this second part you can give us a little bit of your spiritual journey and put God into the story as well.
So for those of you online, Alistair is asking Jackie about God. Imagine that, asking a rabbi about God. So a lot of the conversation we've had up to now has been not about the spiritual part of the journey, and Alistair's asking a bit more about the spiritual side of Jackie's journey.
I remember at West London there was this woman who came from Switzerland and had discovered she was Jewish when her mother was on her deathbed, because the mother told her on her deathbed that she was Jewish. And this woman suddenly went, I'm Jewish, yes, and came to West London. And she tried to go to another synagogue. And she came back to us, she was horrified. She said, I mentioned God in Kiddush and no one talked to me. It's a very personal sort of subject. For me, God is everywhere. God is not just on the spiritual journey, so, you know, that little bit. God is in the teaching, God is in the social care of peoples, the pastoral care. God is in the social life that we have. And God is in the services that we take, hopefully. So I suppose I'm a bit like Maimonides. I don't mention God very often because I don't know how to define that. I've always had a strong belief that there is a God. I'm not always sure what that God is. I'm not always sure that I like that God. When I look at the world, I sometimes wish that I could have a real argument with that God. And sometimes there are times when I rely on that God. And I suppose in my rabbinate, I hope that that is obvious in the sermons I give or the services I take, that there is that God there. But I suppose, yeah, the Maimonidean approach that one doesn't sort of wear it on one's sleeve, if that makes sense.
So we have a couple of questions on the chat from two different people, both asking really about funny experiences, or not embarrassing, but sort of funniest moments in the rabbinate. And maybe you can share an amusing anecdote from your long career.
Yeah, that's always interesting. When I was a student rabbi I think that came on the film though, didn't it? About the student rabbi when I was down in the South London congregation. Did that come into the film?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. So I'll tell that story. So I went to a South London congregation, filling in for one of my fellow students, and this congregation was peripatetic, so they didn't have a place. They came to a building every week and set it up as a synagogue. And one week they'd forgotten to take the Torah in. So they decided that they would make a ritual of bringing in the Torah at the beginning of a service, and that the student rabbi or rabbi would do so. So they went to hand me the Torah, and it was so big. I mean, I'm not that tall. I said, why don't you carry it? So fine. So they also have the custom of reading from the Torah on Friday evening. So they brought the Torah out, and I read from it. And of course, you know, what do you do when you read from the Torah? You turn it a bit this way, turn it. Yeah, you've got to find the place, you read, fine. At the end of the service, the chairman came over to me and he said, you know, I was very pleased. We did have a debate, and by 6-5, we did decide that we would let you touch the Torah. Yes? This is a liberal congregation, by the way, but it is 50-odd years ago, right? We would let you touch the Torah, he said, but I must tell you, I'm so glad you didn't. Right, okay. I watched his wife was killing herself laughing in the background. So I go over to her afterwards and say, no, what's going on? She said, we bring the Torah home every week. who does he think lifts it up and dusts under it? And there was a little boy in the congregation who came over to me, a 10-year-old, and he said, "You've spoilt my evening." So I said, "Why?" I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "I only came here to see you drop the Torah."
Oh, those are some good, that's a good amusing anecdote, lovely. We have a question on the screen about whether the college has any plans to support women who want to study for the rabbinate, but for whom family and personal reasons mean they can't live in London. I don't think that's a question for Jackie to answer. And I'm not sure it's quite for this moment, but I would say that anybody who's interested in studying for the rabbinate should contact us here at Leo Baeck College, whatever the circumstances, and let's talk and let's see exactly what are your individual issues and see if we can't find a way to accommodate them. So we don't have plans for a distance learning program, but we've had lots of people come through the college who've needed different kinds of accommodation. I can't promise always that we can manage, but we're always willing to talk to people and try. We have a wonderful recruitment, rabbinic admissions advisor, student Rabbi Dea Kulakowski, and you can find her details on the college's website. Another question here from the chat is, Rabbi Jackie highlighted the need to ensure a progressive Jewish future. How do we get young teenagers, young women more engaged in synagogue life? They do their bat mitzvah and then vanish. Any tips? I think this has been a question almost as old as your rabbinate, but...
What you mean, as old as the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai? It's an ever... I mean, I was engaged because I was part of the choir, so I had a role. I was engaged because by the age of 15, I was teaching, in the Cheder. This synagogue I grew up in, Southwest Essex, had the custom of not having bar or bat mitzvah until you were 16. I actually had mine when I was nearly 14, because I was already in the post-graduation class. They didn't know what to do with me. So I had it early. But that's another way. If the synagogue at West London and Weybridge, I very much encouraged our young people, once they'd had bar or bat mitzvah, whether they were boys or girls, to be teachers, helpers in the Cheder. Because at least they then, and we found some money to give them, because, that's a good way. And then they were at least involved until they went off to university. And that's, you do whatever you can.
Absolutely. And we know that university is a really important moment, and our movements are very involved in supporting students on campus through chaplaincy work. And that's another important point. In fact, the first job I did out of Leo Baeck College was chaplaincy, and we saw real results in terms of recruitment here when we were really engaged in that work. But I think you're right, getting young people involved in doing things and seeing that they can be part of community life, that's really important. Keeping them intellectually engaged is also really important.
Socially, intellectually, and emotionally.
Yeah.
All three ways.
Absolutely.
And of course, we have to have their parents' encouragement to do that.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Right. We've had some fantastic thoughts from some very inspirational women this evening and a fascinating conversation. If a woman who chooses Judaism as an adult wanted to become a rabbi, what advice would you have for them about entering that sphere and the college environment where I assume many students grew up Jewish? Well, actually, that is, of course, true. Many of our students do grow up Jewish, but definitely not all of them. If there were such a person, I would definitely have rabbinic colleagues that I would encourage them to go talk to. I'm not going to say who those people are because I wouldn't like to publicly say which of our former students themselves may have converted or not grown up in such a Jewish background. But they're definitely colleagues that we could advise people to go talk to. And we are definitely very open all the time to having people come in to train for the rabbinate, whatever their Jewish backgrounds have been.
I think it's also fair to say that it's good if you have some solid Jewish experiences before you come to the college.
Absolutely.
You know, you may come to having had 5-6 years of good, solid Jewish experience.
Absolutely.
As an adult, before you come.
Absolutely. So if you look at the college's admissions criteria, you will see that involvement in communal life is one of the criteria that we look at. And while we generally advise about 5 years post conversion, that does differ with individual cases. Some people have been involved in communities for a very long time before they actively get around to converting. Some people have interesting family backgrounds. We all know that there were all kinds of ruptures in Jewish family backgrounds across Europe. And so we take each case individually. But the general advice is 5 or 6 years post conversion is a good idea. And again, please come talk to us. I can see that Dea has already put the admissions advisor email address up online. Go talk to her, come in and see the college, get to know us a bit. But we hope that this is a very welcoming place. Do we have any other questions? Maybe one last question in the room? Yes.
Looking back, but thinking today, would you do it all over again?
Excellent question. That's from Miriam Cromer. And the question is, looking back, but thinking from today, would you do it all over again?
I have had a wonderful career. I have been so lucky. I have enjoyed most of it. Yes, but you know, no one can say they've enjoyed all of it, I'm sure, in any career. I have enjoyed most of it. I've had wonderful colleagues, wonderful family, wonderful synagogues. I have been privileged to be part of people's lives. You know, as I said, I'm a person. I really am a people person. You know, to have been done baby blessings, bar mitzvahs, and then weddings of the same people. It's amazing. And, you know, to also then maybe be there when grandparents die, to be with families as well, or unfortunately partners or youngsters. But to have that privilege is incredible. I have learned such wonderful stories. I remember a man in Weybridge who was very small and wizened and very quiet, and his hands were a bit deformed, and I never knew. When I did his funeral, I discovered his hands were deformed because he'd crawled out on the wing of his flying aeroplane during the war to extinguish a fire. And so it made his crew come back safely, and they had done pioneering work, grafting on his hands. I mean, what other job gives you the opportunity to meet such people and to hear these stories? So would I do it again? Yes. Would I do it quite the same way? I don't know. There were hiccups, but glass ceilings. But that's inevitable in the age that I was doing it.
Thank you. And someone on the chat, Janet Brayes, just said, thank you. What a privilege to hear Rabbi Jackie. Toda rabba. And I couldn't have really said it better myself. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
It's been a privilege. I feel I owe you not just thanks, but, you know, I wouldn't be sat here if it wasn't for you and for the women who came before me and made it possible for me to be sat here today, to be doing the job I'm doing, to be having the extraordinary career that I feel I get to have working with the future of our career and our communities, and looking out in the room here at students and former students and online, and knowing those people are there as well. So a great thanks to you, not just for being here tonight, but for being you and for having had the tenacity to do what you've done for these past 50 years.
Thank you for listening.
It's a pleasure. I want to just take this brief moment, we're just about to finish, to say a couple of other thank yous, in particular to Victor Elza, who's the head of development here at Baeck College, who's made this evening really work, along with the rest of the office team, Valerie Kay, our office manager, and Paolo Kulikowski, our COO, who've been here tonight with us in person, making sure everything went smoothly. And I just want to remind you that if you found this conversation exciting, engaging, meaningful, if you want to see more Rabbi Dr. Jackie Tabicks out in the world, if you want to ensure the future of our progressive Judaism in this country and further afield, if you believe in the work that we're doing, it doesn't happen without you. We really need your donations during this campaign. We are aiming to raise that £50,000 for 50 years of Jackie's rabbinate. We hope that you can make a contribution towards it. No amount is too small. We understand that not everybody can be a major donor, but if you can be a major donor, we would be very grateful for that too. But everything you give makes a real difference to us. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us this evening. And we hope to hear from many more of you in the future. If you're not already signed up on our mailing list, please do so. You will get recordings of this afterwards. Thank you so much for tonight. Toda rabba.
Thank you.